All right, everyone, we're going to get started. Um, Welcome everyone to the May Old Colony Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting. I just ask if you have not put your affiliation next to your name, please do so. Um, so first up, we'll go over just the agenda quick. So we have two guest speakers today. The first one is Galen Mook, the Executive Director for Mass Bike. He'll be going over the micro mobility report. And then our second guest speaker is Bryce Germain from X Roads, and he'll be going over some X Roads software. And then we'll go into some Bike Month events that OCPC is putting together. Then going over some bike ped projects in the Old Colony region, and then just going over some news items. And then next meeting, and then I'll open it to anyone who has any comments or anything they'd like to talk about. Um, I don't know if Galen is on yet.
I don't see him on yet.
Okay. Um,
I did message him like 15 minutes ago, so maybe he's just trying to get to his computer.
okay. Um, is it okay if we just go to Bryce first and then
Yeah, I
circle
think
back
that's
to
fine.
Galen? Okay.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, so Bryce, if you want to take it away with your presentation first, if you're ready.
Sure. Can you see that at all? Is that displaying?
Let me stop. I'm going to stop my share.
Okay.
Mm,
Well, I see why.
There we go.
Is that showing okay?
Yep.
Excellent. And get some of these tabs out of the way real quick. Great. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me present today. My name is Bryce Germain. I'm the founder of Crossroads. We're a Cambridge-based startup, and we're developing some advanced intersection technologies with a really deep focus on safety, especially for pedestrians and cyclists. So I think it's very relevant to this group. I've put together a very brief presentation. It'll take about 5 minutes to get through, and we're going to be highlighting some of the work that our organization is doing, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. So what is Crossroads' vision, and what are we working to achieve? We believe that all roadway users deserve to be safe and accounted for, a position that I suspect strongly resonates with this advisory committee. And we believe that a lot of existing approaches have severe limitations, especially when it comes to supporting vulnerable roadway users. So we've developed a state-of-the-art intelligence system that fuses LiDAR and camera data in real time and is able to detect all roadway users, including pedestrians and cyclists, with very high accuracy. This enables us to provide insights into roadway operations and to act in real time to improve roadway flow and safety through analytics, signal control, and safety signage. We started with advanced analytics. This is really the foundation of intelligence we'll need to make better decisions. Our system enables deep insights into flow and safety behaviors that can be used to inform or measure the impact of roadway changes. Today, we support flow analytics ranging across classified user volumes, movement counts, and vehicle speeds. And we're currently developing safety analytics, including near misses, stop profiling, lane compliance, among other behavioral anomalies that we'll be launching starting this summer. So this is what our system sees. It's a combination of LiDAR and camera views that not only enable our automation, but can empower understanding through detailed incident and operation review. Our automotive and autonomous vehicle grade LiDAR is especially useful here as it works not only in day and night, but it also eliminates personally identifiable information. We know that security and privacy is very important to many of these communities. So for systems like this, we think that this is a very important factor. The system is very flexible and can be deployed on a multi-hour basis using our portable battery-operated and tripod-mounted mobile units. We can run case studies with those for between 2 to 4 hours. However, we really believe that the most value comes from continuous operation and having pole-mounted units for fixed locations that run 24/7. So you don't just see what happens at part of a day, we see what happens over very long periods of time. All we need for that is access to 110-volt power and a pole in a good position. Lastly, I also want to showcase to this group a really small glimpse of what we're building for the future. This is active digital safety signage. The intention is to intervene and prevent crashes in real time. This is protecting all roadway users, not just vehicles, especially pedestrians and cyclists. So you can think of this as being similar to an advanced warning or an automatic emergency braking system in your car, but for the intersection. We want to provide feedback to roadway users and eliminate errant behaviors, especially things like turning conflicts that have caused many of our fatal crashes to date. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear the audio, but in this scenario, you'll see highlighted is an example of a right-hand turning conflict, and our signage will start in an off position, but gradually escalate up as the risk increases due to the vehicle not appropriately slowing down and coming to a stop. This will include signage, flashing lights, and audible alerts. I want to take a moment too to highlight an example that reflects sort of the initial inspiration for this type of system that many of you may relate to. A few days ago in Cambridge, at a signalized intersection just outside our office, a gentleman decided to cross the street with his head down with a do not walk signal. This was just as an MBTA bus was crossing the intersection, maybe 1 or 2 seconds out from his position, likely traveling at about 15 miles an hour. And it was only after quickly repeating heads up 3 times in escalating tones that he was able to look up and sprint out of the way, very, very narrowly missing a crash with a bus and a pedestrian. And I've been doing this a long time, and that kind of deeply resonated with me again, and kind of was a stark reminder of how active feedback approaches can really help to save lives. So this is the end goal. This is where we're headed. It's not what we have today. And this is what the advanced analytics will really enable in the future in real time. So thank you for your time. We're aiming to partner with some local communities and organizations in Massachusetts. We have a few pilots already lined up this year, but we'd like to better understand community challenges, improve our system, and learn more about pain points that we may further address. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Bryce. Does anybody have any questions for Bryce? All right, well, so I send out a newsletter after the meeting, so I'll share with everyone your contact info within that.
Sounds great.
So if anybody comes up with any questions, they'll be able to reach out to you.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right, thank you. All right, so now moving on to, I see that Galen has come into the meeting, so we can move on to him to discuss micromobility.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Cool. Great. I'm just going to pull up a web page. I didn't prepare any slides, but I do have a blog post that I could share. Is that something that'd be very helpful?
Yeah, let me make you co-host so you can share.
Awesome. Second. Great. And while I'm doing this, hope everyone's having a great bike month. The sun has finally decided to show. A little too much, I might argue. But yeah, we've been busy here at Mass Bike, but I'm glad to kind of dig into something that's probably the hottest topic that we're seeing around the Commonwealth. What to do about all the different devices that are popping up on our streets, sidewalks, pathways, et cetera, et cetera. You've had some pretty high profile incidents in your neck of the woods, a couple of severe crashes in Plymouth involving teenagers on e-motos and potential municipal ordinances that are kind of knee-jerk reactions that are trying to shut down all e-bikes. So I'll give a little bit of context as to where we've been for the past year with the Micromobility Commission, and then I'll talk a bit about the bill that the governor filed as well, which has a hearing next Thursday. Does that sound like a good run of show, Kyle?
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Cool. And also, how much time do you want me to take? Because I could definitely
I mean, you're the last guest speaker, so there's a few items after you, but you can take as much time as you need.
Okay. Well, I definitely want to leave room for Q&A. So, but I'll try to be brief. And by all means, interrupt me as we move ahead here. So in 2024, the legislature passed an amendment to a budget that the governor filed that created the Micromobility Commission, Special Commission on Micromobility. Stop me if you've heard this one already, but we were charged with convening over the better part of a year, which was last year, to meet to figure out all the ins and outs of how to redefine what these devices are, start to think about regulations and device requirements, and then start to think about travel allowances about where people should and shouldn't be using these devices. And what I mean to say is not just the scooter that's pictured here, but e-bikes, class ones, twos that are already codified, but also class threes that are in this nebulous area but are still being bought, sold, and ridden. One wheels, which don't exist in Mass state law, mopeds and motorized bicycles, which the law is outdated because it dates back to the 70s, all the way up to the e-motos that you're seeing that are going like, 40, 50 miles an hour that are essentially souped up e-bikes. And that's the current need. But we're also charged with, at the commission, was thinking about expansion and incentivizing use. So the goal in the end was really how do we future-proof any recommendations that we come out with in order so that as these things become more popular, more utilized, which is a good thing, that we want to be able to have a framework of regulations to build upon as devices change and transportation changes. Mainly because two things. One, we're not wanting to play whack-a-mole with like what's a scooter, what's a bike, what's an e-bike, what's a moped. That seems like even as a professional advocate, I get lost. So let alone if you're trying to have like police officers do a crash report or retailers know what to sell. Um, and second off, we really want to make sure that we're not shutting all of this down. Like what we're seeing in New Jersey, for instance, they just had the governor sign a law into place that restricts all e-bikes to people who have licenses and are wearing full helmet rated DOT stickered motorcycle helmets. So we want to make sure that we're not going in that far. And then also we want to make sure that we're building a framework of regulations that is applicable all across the Commonwealth, knowing that every municipality is going to face their own struggle. How do we make something that is a base so that a municipality can make a nuance for their own needs, for their jurisdiction, for whatever, rights of way that they have control over, knowing that we're dealing with everything from the Berkshires to the Cape, urban, rural, suburban, et cetera. Like these devices are all over the place. We want to make sure that we're representing the state needs. So that's my preface. The commission went really well, in my opinion. I've been on a couple commissions, and this was actually one that was productive. It wasn't just a kick the can and forget about it, but we had the Secretary of Transportation. Over the course of this, we had two of them. We had the Secretary of EOPS over the course of this. We had two of them. We had municipal police chiefs. We had industry. We had advocates on the bicycle side, advocates on the pedestrian side. So Walk Massachusetts was very involved with this as well. We had commuter representation in terms of the transportation management associations, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like we did a pretty robust collection of folks that talked about things. So what did we come out with? And by the way, this commission report exists. Well, if you want to go to this blog post, you're welcome to. Just Micromobility Commission report. But you can read the whole 117-page report here if you really do want to. And it's summarized in this blog post and also on a executive summary as well. But there's 15 recommendations, maybe 16 recommendations that we came up with. The first 3 recommendations are basically about the devices themselves. We need to redefine Chapter 90 in state law to include the ability to have flexibility in what we're defining out there so that we can then regulate it. The first step is to define. Second step will be to regulate. So, and I'll get to the meat and potatoes in a second, but I'll just let you know that what we came up with was basically a speed-based criteria. So tier 0 to tier 3. Tier 0 is 0 to 20 mile an hour devices. And that includes everything from e-bikes that go up to 20 miles an hour, but also analog micromobility like rollerblades. Those can now be incorporated into state law under this tier, assuming this law goes forward. Tier 1 would be 20 to 30 miles an hour, which are essentially electric mopeds and gas power mopeds. So we're kind of aggregating the two. We're not necessarily saying this is just for electric. It's about the device itself, regardless of the type of motor, regardless of the power. because we didn't want, it to have like a kill switch on the motor and now it's a different device under a different tier. Um, so that includes tier one would include basically what we would assume to be mopeds or the equivalent thereof, class three e-bikes, the one wheels that go up to 30 miles an hour, etc. And then we have a class two, which is 30 to 40 miles an hour, um, which are arguably what we're seeing these e-motos as. So the goal of this commission is not to cut off the ability to have e-motos on our roadways, but to actually know what they are so that then we can build regulations around you need a license. So 14-year-olds can't ride them. Or you need to have it registered so that if it's in a crash, police have a way to identify it, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have the faster ones, the tier threes that go, 50 mile an hour and above, because we're assuming we're going to have electric motorcycles on the regular out there. So we're kind of morphing that in there. Now, this does not change the Class M motorcycles for the RMV, but this what would do is kind of aggregate a lot of the opportunities for regulations under those faster devices so that there's a charge of the RMV to figure this out. So suffice to say, the first three recommendations are around how to handle the devices themselves. And what's interesting too, which is recommendation three, which doesn't quite exist yet, is this micro ID concept. So what's the distinction between a license plate and a micro ID? We have yet to really figure that out. But the idea is that we don't necessarily want everybody to go registering their class three e-bikes because that would not be administratively feasible, or every one wheel or every skateboard. As long as it's in a certain class of the tier, it could just get a little micro ID decal so that if it is in an incident, a police officer knows exactly how to identify it. If it does need to be sold or resold, there's a way to actually classify it and have it under retail, et cetera, et cetera. So this is about device recognition. I'll take a quick pause before I jump into anything else. Anything popping in on the chat for me?
Just John noted that he said, need manufacturers to properly market what the vehicle is. E-motos are not e-bikes.
Exactly. Yep. We're seeing that conflation come out in media for sure. Like the Herald article from a couple days ago that is talking about these crazy fast e-bikes. I'm like, well, technically it's not an e-bike. We've defined e-bike. And what we're talking about is actually not an e-bike. So what we were hoping with this is then it would be, oh, that's a class two, I'm sorry, that's a tier two device. So nomenclature matters. Cool. The other recommendations are around how we're going to be handling things. So we definitely need to have police training and crash reporting that is sensible, easy, because you can't expect a beat cop in a situation to kind of really understand what a scooter versus a moped might look like. So how are we actually going to build that into the Executive Office of Public Safety and Securities and the Massachusetts Police Training Committee's work going forward? Because we think that one of the biggest challenges out there is how the police are handling this in real time as they're responding to incidents. And that includes also rewriting the crash and vulnerable user data, which had been redefined when we passed the Act to Reduce Traffic Fatalities, but it arguably made it wicked confusing. So one of the recommendations out of this committee is we need to work more at simplifying what that data is, but still making it robust enough that we can get good data to see if our regulations and incentivizing is actually creating a safer situation out there. We're thinking about doing a default max speed on pathways. This does not negate a local jurisdiction's ability to lower a speed limit on their own, but we wanted to have a default, which is basically saying anything above a a tier one is not allowed on an e-bike. A tier one or above is not allowed on a bike path. So the way to easily do that is basically say we have a default speed limit on pathways of 20 miles an hour. I know 20 miles an hour feels fast on a lot of pathways, but we heard from a lot of pathway committees, namely some of the ones that are major heavy commuters, that, early morning on the Minuteman, it's okay to go 20 miles an hour on my road bike. Maybe not at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, but we didn't want to necessarily put out a recommendation that was onerous and required over enforcement, which would overburden a police and a municipality. So we're just kind of suggesting that we have a default speed because I think that makes it easy for everybody to get on the same page. We are also, I'll just kind of gloss over some of these and I'll get to the tables I want to show you. Just like we're really thinking about how are we going to put these recommendations into play. So we want to have education campaigns that are both RMV and schools and police and municipalities, et cetera. We need to have everybody know about our changing device usage on our roads, pathways, and sidewalks. Um, we're really looking forward to enacting some safety regulations out there. So we're thinking about automated enforcement and how that would impact vulnerable users because this is micromobility. Users are explicitly stated in the vulnerable user bill. That passed in, when did that pass? 2022, maybe? Um, so, we have a new class of users on our roadway. We want to make sure that we're actually treating them with the utmost care. So, yeah. And then, yeah, just smaller recommendations coming down here about how we're going to prime ourselves for expansion. And one thing I definitely want to call out, which is important for planning commissions, MPOs like yourselves, is that we are looking to revamp the design guidance, not just of roadways, but probably of pathways as well. We know that Mass Trails is building a lot of 10-foot pathways around our state. We know that the standard of 12 to 14 feet is basically based on the fact that two people can walk side by side and one person on a bicycle should be able to pass. That's like the back of the envelope rule that we've always been told for pathway guidance. But not for nothing, we're going to have these corridors, these networks of hundreds of miles of interconnected pathways that are going to allow micromobility users to not be on the roadways. So, how are we actually going to design for future use of all of this? Maybe less important for your neck of the woods, but once we get these pathways interconnected, I'm thinking of places like the Northern Strand Trail that's going to connect Lynn all the way to Somerville, or the Minuteman that's going to connect from Belmont out to the Mass Central, or etc. These are going to be not just recreation pathways, but these are really going to be transportation corridors. And then similarly, how are we going to redesign our roadways? I know the Mass DOT has done a good job with their separated bike line guide, separated bike lane design guides. They've done a really good job with their speed management toolkits. How are we going to incorporate micromobility into all of these conversations? Because we've really only been thinking about people on bike, analog, people on foot, or people in wheelchairs, but we've got a lot more uses and a lot more devices and a lot more speed variability out there. Cool. I'll take a quick pause here. There's more stuff, and then we're trying to do expanded bike share, e-bike subsidies. This is about the expansion of the use. And we do have a recommendation for a future study that would be around for commercial purposes. Namely, I'm thinking of delivery drivers. So think of Amazon drivers on the four-wheeled electric carts that can go around and drop off boxes. The Grubhubbers on the e-bikes that are zipping around urban areas, and et cetera. How are we actually going to incentivize people to not use automobiles for things that we don't need automobiles for? And former chief of streets here in Boston would always say, why do we need a 2,000-pound death machine to deliver somebody's chicken sandwich? Cool. So I'll take a quick pause there and then I want to get into the tables. But hopefully this is helpful. But questions or thoughts so far? Cool. All right, so there's three tables. One's for travel allowances, one is for device requirements, and one is for operational requirements. I'll just put these up here and happy to share this blog afterwards, Kyle, so you can send it around. Um, but oh yeah, Richard, please jump in.
Maybe you could repeat that. You mentioned I think it was 14 feet for a bicycle and a bicycle to be able to pass around other. Was that 14 feet you said?
Yeah, it's always what I've been told that the design standard preferred is 12 feet, minimum is 8. They're building a lot of 10-foot pathways. So I think it all comes down to, rights of way and funding for projects and if there's drainage and if there's a side path, et cetera, et cetera. But I've always been told from the Mass Trails team that 12 feet is preferred. And a lot of that is based on the rule of you should have two people be able to walk side by side and one bicyclist be able to pass safely.
That's relevant to our work on DW Field Park and the roads, the pathways there. Thank you.
Now, I should caveat that by saying I'm not a planner, I'm not a lawyer, I just deal with a lot of planners and lawyers, and yeah, so you might want to check with the Mass Trails team to see exactly if there's any more guidance that they have on there. And I also know that there's a new guidance coming out from the Office of Outdoor Recreation about trails for all. So they're also thinking about accessibility concerns that are being now built into design guidelines. Cool. But good question. Thanks. All right, so travel allowances. Actually, I'm going to skip and do device requirements, then I'll go to travel allowances. So, what we're looking at for devices, because I think this matters for manufacturers and vendors. Again, the tier 0 is kind of what we're seeing out there, and nobody really has a problem with them. But we're thinking about like, do we need lights and horns, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a bill out right now that I'll jump to in a minute that kind of goes off of these requirements. You can see here that mobility aid device is basically like a wheelchair, electric wheelchair, for instance. Powered micromobility might be a class 1 or 2 e-bike, and then there's human powered. I'm a little iffy on this one because I don't necessarily think that you need to have lights and a horn on your rollerblades. So I gotta say that this is not like 100% where I've had my recommendations, and there's still work to be done, which is why there's a bill being heard right now, and there's a chance to weigh in at a hearing next week, and over the next couple of weeks while the committee will be taking some feedback. And then yeah, we're looking at like the idea of building it in here. I'll zoom in a little bit. Hopefully this helps. I know it's convoluted, but this is how DOT is approaching it. I'll take a quick pause here. This all making sense to everybody? Cool.
Yeah. And I did share the link to this post in the chat if anybody wants to open that up on their screen.
Awesome. Thank you. Cool. And then operational requirements, then I'll do travel restrictions. So operational requirements, we're thinking, so one of the big concerns we heard was we have a lot of teenagers riding e-motos that are like going 30 to 40 miles an hour. And so we're like, okay, you're right, that's a big deal. They should be licensed. So you can see here where it says, you know, type TBD under class 2, 2B, powered micromobility. Those are the e-motos that most people are concerned about. The media is all hyped up about. The RMV doesn't really know what it's going to do with it yet, so we're figuring out. Does it require registration? Probably not. Does it require insurance? It might. They can do some real harm. And does the user need to have a license? Yeah, probably. We just have to figure out what that is. So this is a recommendation for work that still needs to be done. This is not the end of the work. This is really kind of the first step forward to make sure that we are all on the same page about like, let's tackle the big concerns and then figure out as we move forward. And actually the bill that the governor filed, the last portion of it is to assign another commission, which is going to work over the course of next year in 2027 to actually make real recommendations around insurance, around registration, and around education licensing and all the rest. Cool. I'll take a quick pause here. For me, it's important at Mass Bike to be like, hey, this is pretty clear that, you know, e-bikes as we know them don't require registration, don't require insurance. But the faster ones, you got to be 16 or up because you can actually break a speed limit on the slower speed roads on the powered e-bikes that go 28 miles an hour, which arguably we're going to hopefully define as e-bikes. But it would still be a tiered. So it would say e-bike, but it would be, for all intents and purposes, under a tier 1 for the faster class 3s. Cool.
So
and I'm also here. Yeah, jump in, please.
yeah, just Yolando Spinola from Walk Mass in the chat said speed is the real difference between tiers, and that makes it really easy to understand.
Cool. Thanks, Yolando. Yeah, and I should definitely give shout outs to Walk Mass. Brendan Carney, the executive director, was an alternate on this commission, but chimed in at every meeting. And they had Stephanie Steskin, who is on the board of NACTO as well. And she was the official rep for Walk Mass. So great to have a kind of a collaboration of organizations on this one. Cool. And then I'll go up to travel allowances. So this was a big one too. Kind of cool with everything being on roadways. We're not cool with everything being on shared use pathways. So this would limit the class 3 e-bikes. Now, I have a little bit of concern around some of the way that we're defining this because I do say that it is more about the user and not the device as to whether or not it's reckless, it's negligent, and whether it should be allowed. I'm okay with class 3 e-bikes being in a higher tiered category based on their top speed. But the quote that I always like to bring up that I've said time and time again, some of you may have heard it, is that, I understand that speed is the determining factor of danger out there. But I'm also allowed to drive my Maserati in a school zone as long as I drive my Maserati 20 miles an hour. Now, that's presuming I have a Maserati. Obviously, I have an Aston Martin. But the point is that, like, it is more about the case of the user that I am hoping to kind of reinforce with kind of these conversations and not to have overly onerous restrictions on where we can use these devices because we want people to be able to feel safe and comfortable riding on the pathway system if the roads are dangerous. And a lot of these roads are dangerous out across the Commonwealth. And we don't want to make people feel like they have to be in a dangerous situation and put themselves in danger in order to ride a micromobility device, because then they're not going to ride them. They're going to stick with their car. Cool. I'll get off my soapbox. Yeah, Richard, please jump in.
I see on sidewalks, you show that bikes can use sidewalks according to local bicycling rules, which is my understanding as well. It seems to me that's almost not well known that people think it's not legal to ride a bike on a sidewalk. Is that something getting any visibility or publicity?
That's a really good concern. And to clarify a little bit too, yeah, you can ride an analog bicycle, standard bicycle on a sidewalk, not in a business district, if absent any local regulation. However, every jurisdiction is able to prohibit on sidewalks as they see fit. The caveat, though, is that Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes are not allowed on sidewalks because the bill that got passed to codify Class 1s and 2, this is part of the compromise that we had to have in order to make the bill go forward to the legislature, was that currently e-bikes are prohibited from sidewalks. Now, in this commission report, there is the recommendation that if you are between safe infrastructure or if you're on a roadway that's dangerous, that tier 0 should be allowed on sidewalks as long as users are yielding to pedestrians and riding in a safe manner. Now, that would conflict with the current Class 1 and Class 2 e-bike law. So this is something that I want to call out that, and I'll get to in a minute, of the governor's bill. That's a little bit of a sticking point because the recommendations of this committee are that tier 0 could be allowed on sidewalks if there isn't a prohibition. But that isn't necessarily the case with the Class 1s and Class 2s at this point. But I'm a believer that, like, if you're riding in, I'm trying to think of a street in the old colony neck of the woods, that, like, you wouldn't want somebody on the roads. If they're riding with their granddaughter to go get ice cream down the block, it's probably okay that they're on the sidewalk as long as they're doing so yielding. So this is the kind of the trickiest part of it is for me, it's kind of the sidewalks portion of it. But right now you can see powered micromobility is not allowed on sidewalks. However, the recommendation of the commission is that tier 0 could be allowed on sidewalks if the jurisdiction is cool with it.
For some reason, there's an impression that it's not legal for a regular bicycle to be on a sidewalk.
Yeah, and that maybe comes to, I'll scroll up a bit, comes to the education. Where did I get to on that one? The education campaign. So I think that's incumbent on orgs like Mass Bike, and safety campaigns and design campaigns to make that known. Yeah, I think you should. I'm open to recommendations as to how we deal with that recommendation because your community, what hits, and how can we create something that actually spreads the word that we need to spread. We're not going to get signs up, probably municipalities that say bicyclists allowed on sidewalks. It's probably not going to be the solution. So what are other ways with which we can build an education campaign But again, I want to caveat it by saying that bicyclists who, if they are riding, need to yield, obviously, for the safety of the sidewalk user.
I'd agree with that. I'm not sure it's coded into law, however.
Mm-mm. Yeah, agree with that. So yes, my shorter answer is work yet to be done to make it feel like we've actually succeeded in our education campaigns.
But just from a commuting to work standpoint, I mean, being able to ride on the sidewalk on a busy street like Page or Pond Street in Avon is definitely a safety enhancement for the bicyclists.
Mm-hmm. And I would argue probably safer for the drivers out there too.
True, true. Thank
Uh,
you.
John in the chat stated the inverse is also an issue. Drivers constantly yell at me to get on the sidewalk with my e-bike.
Yeah. Yep. I get that too. Get off the road. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, you're like, no. Here, I'm gonna pull up the governor's bill, and that'll be the last thing I'll show you here. Hmm. All right. Thanks for letting me just do this via a browser. Didn't quite have a lot of time to build a slide deck here. All right. So S3077 is currently in the Joint Transportation Committee. The governor filed it about a week and a half ago. I don't necessarily appreciate the title of it, but I think it's fine. We are enhancing the safe use of micromobility, but really it's about a classification of micromobility devices as they fit into our transportation system. The hearing for this is next Thursday. So Richard, John, anybody else who's got thoughts about some of this stuff, I highly recommend chiming in. Written testimony is more than welcome. There's only 2 bills on this hearing docket, but we want to make sure we're not packing it. And then we think that the Transportation Committee wants to move on this pretty quickly, knowing that the bill got filed and a hearing got scheduled, and they want to probably tackle it before June. For anybody unfamiliar with the legislative calendar, this is the second year of a 2-year cycle. All bills need to be heard and reported out by the end of July. They have a lot of big ticket issues on their plate right now, including Ways and Means. They've got an environmental bill. We've got energy conversations going on. So we're thinking this is going to be a standalone bill, which moves. And the bill itself, which I'm not going to read to you, but you can check it out. If you go to the MassGov site, maybe Kyle, you could send this around as well. It kind of is denser than you might want to read all the 14 pages of it, but suffice to say, in my opinion, if you want to hear from MassBike's perspective, this does a really good job of creating the tiered structure of speed in terms of classification. It does a good job of setting forth kind of a way that the RMV is going to work on the micro decal and the police are going to work on training and how we're going to reform the crash report, but doesn't prescribe it. It just creates another process with which we have to figure this out by creating a commission. So I appreciate that. And there's a couple of sticky points in here. For instance, the sidewalk one that allows class tier zeros on sidewalks. How does that fit with current law, which prohibits the class 1s and 2s? So I am personally going to have MassBike submit, follow-up testimony. Our testimony is going to be generic, like, we really appreciate that this is moving forward. Legislature should create a structure for tiering. We think this is a good structure that future-proofs the definitions. And then I'm going to ask that we kind of work a little bit further on the allowances portion of the conversation. Because I think that this is not the end of the conversation. This is going to be one bill and probably a set of 3 or 4 bills that tackle everything that the commission recommendations come out with. Cool.
Do you see I had a question if you have a moment.
Yeah, please.
So Boston has moved to having a lot more bicycle lanes and it's created some controversy, and I think the guy in charge lost his job over it. Does this bill in support or go somewhat against what Boston is doing?
That's a good question. I think the idea that this doesn't necessarily tackle infrastructure yet. And I live in Boston, by the way. I've asked my city councilor what they think of it. And they've actually asked that the city council pass a resolution in support of this bill because they need legislative backing in order to move forward with regulations that they want. One of the regulations Boston is trying to do is they don't want mopeds in bike lanes. Currently, under mass law, mopeds are allowed in bike lanes. It's becoming a problem because of the delivery drivers kind of recklessly treating bike lanes. And I'm going to cast aspersions to all bicyclists here. Bicyclists run red lights. It's true. Mopeds in bike lanes are also encouraged to run red lights because they're treated as bicyclists because the police don't have the capacity to do enforcement. The infrastructure isn't around to really have good set for signal timing, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots of reasons why cyclists run red lights, and I'm not trying to say it's okay. I'm just saying it's a fact. But what Boston really wants to do is really separate out the concept. If you're on a moped, you are not to be considered having the same rights and responsibilities as a bicyclist. Even though I just talked about bicyclists breaking those laws. But the idea that like that would allow mopeds to be classified separately. And so that it's not, again, this game of like, well, one regulation here and one regulation there. This would be a blanket statement Commonwealth-wide that would remove the ability for mopeds to be in bike lanes so that when new infrastructure is built out, the separated bike lanes, the parking protected bike lanes, the flex post protected bike lanes, those really are for the slower tiered devices. So in short, this is supportive of generally the Boston infrastructure needs. However, this doesn't really tackle infrastructure fully. It really kind of tackles the device more than anything else.
Thank you.
May I, Kyle?
Hey, Jed.
Hey, Jed, yeah,
hey,
go
Galen,
ahead.
how are you?
Good to see you.
Good. And so I was late. I'm in the Champions Institute, transportation for Mass, so that went in a half
What a
hour into
flex.
this meeting. But and I hate to be a party pooper, and I appreciate all the great work you've done. And I'm also, very much a policy detail wonk.
Mhm.
So I always get that part of all this. But I just got to tell you, I'm even as someone in the industry, so to speak, I'm just completely losing track of what's what, and I don't see how local police or parents are going to make sense of this, and I can't, and I admittedly don't have a suggestion how to do so. I don't know whether we need something like NIMON, I can't pronounce, but some kind of uh acronym like you have with strokes, right? FAST, like to get people to remember what is what, or
Yeah.
maybe it's a color coding system, like
All right.
the blue e-bikes get this and the red get that, or again, I admit I don't know what rubric to use, but it's got to be something to make sense of this because it is just I'm honestly sort of zoning out on the details here. And again, I want to appreciate this. I appreciate all the work you've done. But I don't know how the general public's going to make sense of this. I just don't. And we know the legislature could really muck it up too. So
Yeah, I think that's great feedback. We've tiered it in terms of numbers, but maybe that's not the right way to define it. We still have some wiggle room in this. Yeah, color coding is something that we could do with the micro decal. So I will say, Jed, that the follow-up, if this bill moves forward, there's going to be a follow-up commission that has work to report for next year, end of 2027, which would inform what that micro decal looks like, how it works, how it operates. And that could be a way of getting something on the ground now, and then knowing that we've got more work to do to make it so that there is something that is, like you say, like the police, the parents, the schools, et cetera, like it all makes sense to them.
right.
I want to be clear that this bill is really only tackling like the first two or three recommendations of this commission, and it is incumbent on us to make sure that we are keeping the heat on so that the work is done. But there's here, I'll go to where is it? Micro decal, which one is here? The operational requirements. Yeah. This like state ID micro decal column right here. We don't know what that looks like. Could easily be color coded. It could easily have not numbers, but like class, whatever, class A, class L, etc.
Yeah.
So point well taken, but I would say that the current bill doesn't even try to address that. Instead, it just creates a commission that forces that conversation to be done next year.
Right. Well, and I guess one political suggest or possible solution to this, and I don't think many of us would not like this, but you alluded this early when you're talking about that some things are being put in boxes that maybe they shouldn't be in there. But maybe that's a concession we have to make for the sake of simplicity. So for example, mopeds on certain surface, right? If mopeds of a certain level. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying about being respectful, like that person isn't necessarily a danger, but maybe for the sake of simplicity, that is the political compromise to make, is to say, be a bit arbitrary about it. Okay, these supercharged bikes, they're in this box, and class 2 are in this box. I don't know, because I just feel like once we start making these exceptions, then we're drowning in the details.
Yep.
But again, I don't really have a good answer for you. So. Sorry.
So can I just jump in? The state of California actually filed a lawsuit against Amazon for selling these 45-mile-an-hour e-bikes for teen adults. I can share an article. Like, it's pretty bad. And then suddenly Amazon stopped selling them in all of the state of California. Now they're still available in the rest of the country. And that's kind of a lot of this, we end up blaming the end user when it's really these big tech companies. And like the case in Boston with the delivery drivers, again, that's an Uber Eats issue, not necessarily the individual writer. So I think these laws are meant to be able to push the tech industry as much as they are to deal with police departments and end users.
Yep. Yeah, and we're cautious of bills like the California one having to be reactive. And we are trying to really be proactive with kind of creating a base and assuming that if we create something that's, to your point, Jed, like easily understood, then we'll hopefully mitigate some of the challenges we're seeing out there. I think one of the challenges you're seeing definitely in your communities are like parents are buying souped up e-motos because they're sold as e-bikes. And we've been doing such a good job of being like, e-bikes are great. E-bikes are, independent for everybody. And and then you're like, wait a minute, that's not what I meant by e-bike. Cool. Okay, so my ask then, digest this. I know it's a lot, and I wish that we didn't have such a 117-page report, but that's what DOT does. But please chime in if you are so interested for the hearing next week. If you want to just pay attention to it, that's really nice. If you do want to send any comments in, because I don't think we have this perfect yet. And the whole point of public engagement and public process through the legislative sausage machine, to Jed's point, it can get real mucked up. So let's make sure that what we're doing is still encouraging the legislature to do what they need to do in order to make a base that is solid. And then hopefully that would allow your work to move forward with some strong foundation.
One comment, perhaps it's me, but the acronym E-Moto, I mean, it would be more meaningful to me if we just said electric motorcycle. To me, that's a lot clearer than E-Moto.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think we want to get away from it's this device name versus that device name, but we get to the tiered. Oh, it's a tier 2 or it's a tier 3.
All right.
Cool.
Anybody else?
Great.
All right. Thank you very much, Galen. That was informative. We'll keep an eye on that bill, see what happens with that.
Excellent. Thanks. Yeah. And if your government affairs team wants to chat about it, give me a ring.
Sounds good. Thank you. All right. So we're going to, let's see. We're going to move on to talk about some Bike Month events that OCPC is putting together. Um, Unfortunately, we don't have any events actually in Bike Month, which is May, but we kind of have some bookend events. We had one in April, and then we have a few in the beginning of June. So, Sean, if you want to talk about the Trails Day.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kyle. For any of you who may not know me, I'm Sean Bailey, one of the senior transportation planners here at Old Colony Planning Council. On Saturday, April 25th, it was National Trails Day, and what better day to celebrate and what better venue in our region to celebrate than on the Hanover Branch Rail Trail. We had a very nice table set up with some freebies and some giveaways from the Rails to Trails Conservancy, Athletic Brewing, as well as from Mass Bike, and to partner with local businesses. Just up the street from where we were in the town of Rockland is a small donut shop called Hole in One Donuts. So we had purchased a dozen to hand out to any riders or walkers that wanted to indulge. We also had some apples as well. It was a beautiful day for it, and we engaged probably somewhere between 20 and 30 total people, some families, some people out on the trail enjoying the day by themselves. But definitely an event that we will be looking to continue each year.
Thank you, Sean. And
Can I
then
just,
so our
oh,
oh,
can I
go
just
ahead.
comment on the trail?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I did the five borough in New York, which is 40 miles. So desperately needed a train. So I said, let me ride out to that trail, get me like 22 miles in. And last time I'd been to it, the extension wasn't finished. So I really think with the extension, it's now like worth the trip, so to speak. It's now a significant trail. And my comment was there was a girl, like a middle school age girl who was in past me at one point, was in front of me the entire run of the thing, on one of those stand-up scooter things, which I know we're the evil, 5 years ago, right? Just like we're talking about e-bikes. But I just was struck about like how much freedom she had because assuming her parents felt like this is a safe space, a controlled space for her to be. And just to go, what is it, 5, 6 miles back and forth on a nice Sunday afternoon. So it's quite nice. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I believe from end to end, the Hanover Rail Trail is roughly 3 miles, maybe a little more or less, but it's around 3 miles, and it's a great great trail to visit. Kyle and I actually before the event rode our bicycles on the trail. Great paths for our region.
All right. Thank you. So moving on, our next event coming up is on Saturday, June 6th at 9 a.m. This will be at Borderland State Park. We're partnering with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, as well as Smith Farm. Registration, you can register on the Mass Bike Calendar website, and I provided the link to that. So this will be a short, about a 3 mile bike ride through Borderland, and there'll be a few stops along the way with workers at Borderland giving a quick historic talk of the different stops that we stop at. And then at the end, they'll be providing a free tour of the Ames Mansion, which will be a fun time. And June 7th, Matt, if you want to talk about the Bikes and Brews event.
Sure. So we're excited to host this event again with our friends at On Toll Brewing, On Brew Cycling Club, as well as Serious Cycles and possibly the town of Plymouth with their wildlife trailer. This event is a great way to encourage folks to go out and ride in a pack on the main road. But there's also a great opportunity for families just to come with their kids and ride along the rail trail along the coast, the Shining Sea Trail in Plymouth. It's about 3 miles. The two other rides are going to be 12 miles and 24.3 miles. The event kicks off at various times depending on the ride. I'll drop in the chat in just a second the registration.
No need,
And
Matt. I've already done so.
oh, Great. Thank you very much, Sean. So we hope that you guys can make it out. It's a great opportunity to meet other cyclists, talk about different equipment, enjoy a pint or two, and enjoy some good food. We hope to have another food truck there. So, any questions? Seeing
Awesome.
none, I'll hand it back.
Thank you. And then wrapping up our event on Saturday, June 13th at 10 a.m. Is Whitman Day. This will be at the Whitman Town Park. We'll be partnering with the town of Whitman, and there'll be bike safety and maintenance demos. And then Sean, if you want to discuss the projects.
Yes, and absolutely. Thank you, Kyle. And also, just for people to know, the Borderland event registration link is also in the chat if you are interested in attending. And so moving on to our recurring discussion of projects in the OCPC region. The first one is in the town of Plymouth, which is intersection improvements on Route 3A State Road from Herring Pond Road to Hedges Pond Road. And then the second project is for District 5 that involves 6 towns, 2 of which are in the OCPC region, those being Abington and Stoughton. Oh, excuse me, Hanover as well, so 3 of them. And this project is for bicycle and pedestrian improvements at multiple locations. The work includes improvements to sidewalks, ADA ramps, striping, and safe crossings. And I will defer to either Barbara LaChance or Cheryl Ann Senior for any additional updates on either of these projects.
Hi, everyone. This is Barbara. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I know this headset sometimes is a little wonky. So I'm Barbara LaChance. I'm the District 5 planner with MassDOT. And these 2 projects, so right now I can give you an update on the status of where we are in the design phase for these. So the Plymouth project currently has gone through, is, I believe, not quite if it's finished completely with the intersection control evaluation process, which is the ICE process we have to go through. We ourselves, districts, have completed ICE stage 2. I'm not sure if headquarters has approved that yet, but we have done our review for that. We've also had a scoping meeting on this and have reviewed a checklist for this. And currently, right now, we're waiting for the design consultant to submit us a design schedule for this project. So we're definitely moving forward with this project. And for the D5 bike ped one, they are working on comments that were received. We had a pre-25 meeting for this one, like an over-the-shoulder meeting. They call it an OTS meeting. And they submitted like some concepts and stuff like that. So right now, the design consultant is in the process of reviewing those comments. And they're moving towards a 25% submission. We don't have a exact date for that submission yet, but when I spoke to the project manager on this, he's hoping for a fall submission. So both of these projects are in the preliminary design stages, but they're both moving forward. So that's positive for both of these.
Okay. Thank you very much, Barbara. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I do, Barbara. The Plymouth Street, that's still proceeding. The one here
As
in
far as
Rockford. Yeah, sorry.
the Plymouth Street or the Plymouth, which one are you
It's
looking
the
for?
Plymouth Street. I forget the number. It's the Plymouth Street project. I know there was. I guess the budget went up by 750 grand. So I was just.
Yeah,
I can check on that for you. I believe it is.
yeah, it's still going through. It's
Okay.
scheduled to be advertised.
Thank you, Bill.
Right. No, and I'm also the condo trustee. I know that the appraiser has approached us about the temporary easement. So clearly,
Oh, okay.
clearly it is moving along. I just want to make sure.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So moving on. So just a few communication items here. A couple virtual design public hearings coming up. The first one is for Kingston Duxbury intersection improvements at Route 3 ramps and Route 3A Tremont Street. That'll be on Tuesday, June 2nd at 6 p.m. and the Zoom link is provided. And then second one is for Kingston replacement of Smith's Lane over State Route 3. That'll be on Tuesday, June 9th at 6:30 p.m. and the link is provided as well. And then the third one is Governor Healy files Ride Safe Act to strengthen public safety, regulate e-bikes, moped, scooters, which we talked earlier. And then I just provided the 2 flyers for both of those public hearings. And then our next meeting will be later this summer, August 19th. And I'll just open it up if there's any last minute comments, questions. Yeah, let me know.
Yes.
Yeah,
Unless
go
someone
ahead.
else is online. Jed Resco, Brockton Bikes. Forgive me if Yolanda or someone else covered this part earlier, but we have formed Brockton Bikes, Walk Massachusetts, and the Brockton Workers Alliance have formed the Brockton Transportation Safety Coalition. We are on Facebook, no website yet. We're working on that. We've already met with the mayor's deputy chief of staff, who is clearly going to become the chief of staff at some point, Nelson Fernandez, and given our list of sort of demands or suggestions to him. There's everything from comprehensive transit planning to things like quick build interventions. And so in that spirit of safety, I just want to note William Durth Jr., who was the hit and run on Friday, May 1st on Belmont Street. Not to put MassDOT on the spot, but if I take this to the Traffic Commission, they're going to tell me this is a MassDOT issue. As I understand it, sorry, it wasn't a hit and run. But it was a crash. He was killed. Yolando has done some numbers, and if I remember correctly, we have 34 pedestrian deaths since late 2015. So basically in 10 years, 34 pedestrian deaths. He did cross the street apparently where there was no light. I would note that on that stretch of 123, there are 2 sections that are a quarter mile long or longer where there is no crosswalk, no light, or anything like that. So I don't think we should act surprised when pedestrians cross mid-block, so to speak. So I don't know whether there's anything that MassDOT can do in the short term to help mitigate the conditions there. But again, as I said, if I take this to Traffic Commission, they're simply going to kick it off the agenda and say that it's a MassDOT problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jed. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, I think we'll conclude the meeting, and we'll see everyone later this summer. I hope everyone has a good summer and get out there on your bikes and have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As long as I know this is summer for real, I'm good to go.
You're good.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a good
Have a
one.
good one. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Scott.